some of us get the most fun out of drastically different genres and for different reasons. The joy of skipping across the Mushroom Kingdom or making an evil doctor release the Chaos Emeralds can inspire very different feelings, from ripping and tearing demons or weaving through traffic in Paradise City. The human brain is a strange thing, and we even seek out thrills and adrenaline rushes from things that trigger our deepest responses to danger. You might think that this is all segueing into Resident Evil, but I, an intellectual, am leading into fear. Short for First Encounter Assault Recon, the unique blend of first-person shooting, sci-fi horror, and lore tied together lovingly by the talented team at Monolith Productions. The ones owned by Warner Brothers, not the ones behind the Xenoblade series, just to be clear. The game was developed with the PC in mind and brought to the PS3 and the Xbox 360 afterwards, where the first game took off to great critical reception, likening the series to Half-Life, which is just about the highest honor you can receive as a PC-focused shooter. We haven't seen a new entry in the series since 2011, and before digging deeper, it might be easy to believe that the studio joining the Warner Brothers publishing umbrella forced them into a licensed game purgatory. However, it is worth noting that the first game, Fear, launched in 2005 following the acquisition. Unfortunately, we can't really blame the disappearance directly on WB here. Through an exploration of the series' history, we're hoping to discover just why we haven't seen any games for so long. So, what the hell happened to Fear? When the series launched in 2005, it was going up against quite a lot of other shooters with the rocketing popularity of the genre. However, Monolith smartly leveraged a few design decisions to make the horror game stand out, the first being the genre. Survival horror games would usually be modeled after Resident Evil at that time, for no reason other than the fact that it was the most popular series in the genre. More involved shooting mechanics than those common at the time made the game unique from a play perspective as well. The supernatural elements of Fear, which sees the player take control of the Fear team's point man, and leveraged powers such as bullet time to give them a feeling of power against rather shockingly intelligent AI enemies, at least all before the antagonist Alma takes it away. Alma and the intricate plot and lore that the series would grow and develop over its short run stands as its legacy today. Throughout the first game, visions of a girl in a red dress haunt Point Man, and laptops provide insight on the terrifying experiments conducted on the woman named Alma. Her torture granted her frightening powers, somewhat like the girl from The Ring and Slender Man, with an attitude. The entire plot of the third game takes off from a rather violent assault she performs on the hero in the second game. Did I mention that this series is far less campy than its contemporaries? 2 expansions would come out of the original game that built on the story and the characters, as well as fleshed out the unique multiplayer mode on offer, which leveraged the shooting mechanics and bullet time. But it would be 4 years before Monolith would give us a true sequel in Fear 2 Project Origin. Unfortunately, for all of the novel things the game did with its story, the genre had caught up to it in the interim. The beginning of an unfortunate drop in the Metacritic average began here, as the team just didn't improve much upon the base foundation. Taking place almost simultaneously as the events of the first game, players take on the role of someone new, Michael Beckett, an operator on the Delta Force team that was supposed to support the team of the first game, as he undergoes his own trials thanks to Alma, and discovers his own dark relation to the events that shaped her. As alluded to earlier, the game ends with Beckett being forced to impregnate Alma, setting up the events of the third game. Fear 2 was generally liked and debuted at the number 2 spot in the US and UK sales charts for the platform, despite the critics finding that the game didn't really do anything that new. By the time Fear 2 came around, the unfortunate reality was that the landscape of the medium had been irrevocably changed. Publishers all wanted to chase that money, forgetting that they had an audience already there. The environment is where we now find the development of Fear 3, which was handled by a completely different studio and generally received the same critical reception as the previous game. The sales were a different story altogether. Day One Studios had previously assisted with porting the first game to consoles, but otherwise was completely new to the series. This resulted in numerous changes to the formula, many of them based on popular ideas at the time, such as the game needing a co-op system to be successful. This led to the game showing the hero and villain from the first game teaming up to find the pregnant Alma, both for their own reasons. Generally though, the team at Day One Studios failed to capture the spirit of the original 2 games, which reflected in the critical reception. There is a distinct change in the tone of reviews from Fear 2 to Fear 3, with outlets such as GameSpot and Eurogamer being generally unimpressed by the scares, and considering the core of the series, that psychological horror, as secondary to the action. IGN's Colin Moriarty literally included the words, "something set in a unique horror-filled atmosphere," to describe the game as a shooter first. While strong shooting was in the DNA of Fear, it was never really the major draw. Really, the story of why Fear disappeared is much about the story of why survival horror games disappeared altogether. Publishers went on the action gold rush that defined much of the previous generation, but left the audience they did have out in the cold. Fear 3 sold very poorly and saw the studio lay off 100 people following disappointing sales. A 2013 attempted free-to-play online multiplayer game called Fear Online would never even make it out of open beta due to a lack of support and general apathy from a gaming audience. Unfortunately, while both the lackluster sales of Fear 3 and the total failure of Fear Online might mean that it's time to pour one out for Monolith Productions' best-known game series, things have gotten better. The era of shooter seems to have come to an end, leaving them to return to more interesting ideas once again. More importantly, some high-profile successes in the indie market, and even from publishers such as Bethesda with the Evil Within series, have started to see the genre make something of a resurgence. Resident Evil 7 made a glorious return to form, and we still lament the fact that we're in the darkest timeline where Silent Hills never happened. I guess the moral of this episode of Publishers Ruin Everything is that even a totally dead genre can rise again. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.